7-year-old girl tells a judge the truth about her father. Then this happened. A father's fight for justice begins. It was a gray morning, the air thick with anticipation as people filed into the courtroom. Their murmurs filled the space like a low, static hum. The room itself was unremarkable, polished wooden benches, a gavel resting silently on the judge's desk. Yet, what unfolded that day was far from ordinary. In the defendant's seat sat a man, weathered yet dignified, bearing the expression of someone who had spent 4 long years waiting for justice. His name was Mark Carter, a 39-year-old father, husband, and a respected member of his community before his life was upended. 4 years ago, Mark had been wrongfully accused of a crime he didn't commit, a robbery gone tragically wrong. They said it was a case of mistaken identity. Mark had always maintained his innocence, but the system failed him, sending him to prison and leaving his family to struggle without him. Beside him sat his wife, Jasmine, her eyes brimming with tears that threatened to spill over, tears she had cried countless times before. For years. For birthdays missed. For Christmas mornings when their daughter, Ava, asked why her daddy wasn't coming home. Ava, now 7, had watched quietly from the back of the courtroom for days. But today, something was different. No longer content to sit silently, Ava stood. The little girl, with her big brown eyes and small frame, seemed to grow as she cleared her throat. The courtroom fell silent, every eye turning to her as she did the unthinkable. "Your Honor," Ava began, her voice trembling but firm, "can I say something?" The judge, a stern but fair woman named Elaine Monroe, looked momentarily caught off guard but gestured for Ava to step forward. Her tiny shoes echoed against the cold, hard floor as she approached the bench. Jasmine whispered for her to sit back down, but Ava was determined. Clutching her favorite stuffed bear tightly, Ava looked up at Judge Monroe. "My daddy didn't do it," she said, her voice breaking.
"He's not a bad man."
"He's my hero." The room was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. The judge leaned forward, her expression softening. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" she asked gently. Ava gripped her bear, even tighter. "Because my daddy always tells me to tell the truth. He told me he didn't do it, and I believe him. Don't you?" Mark's eyes filled with tears as he watched his daughter stand up for him in a way no one else ever had. Jasmine sobbed quietly, and even the courtroom clerk discreetly wiped at her eyes. But Ava wasn't finished. "We don't have him at home anymore," she said, her voice quivering. "Mommy cries every night. I cry too. But Daddy always says to be strong, and that the truth always wins." Her gaze locked with the judge's, unwavering and full of quiet determination. "Can you please help us? Please?" Judge Monroe leaned back in her chair, visibly moved. It wasn't every day that a 7-year-old girl pierced through the cold machinery of the justice system with nothing but her truth and a plea for fairness. But it was what Ava said next that changed everything. "I prayed every night for 4 years," she said softly. "I prayed for someone to listen. Will you listen?" The judge, fighting back her own tears, nodded. "I'm listening," she said. With that, she ordered an immediate review of the evidence, something no one had thought to do in 4 long years. What followed over the next few hours stunned everyone in the courtroom. A single piece of overlooked surveillance footage, blurry but clear enough to identify the real perpetrator, had been sitting in the evidence locker all along. It showed a man of similar build committing the crime while Mark was miles away at work. The oversight was catastrophic, a clerical error, a rush to judgment, a system that had failed at every turn. Judge Monroe, visibly furious, ordered Mark's immediate release and called for a full investigation into how such a grave mistake could have occurred. As Mark walked out of the courtroom, a free man at last, he fell to his knees and hugged Ava tightly, holding her as though he'd never let go. The aftermath of the case was explosive. Mark filed a $20 million lawsuit against the state, not just for the 4 years stolen from him, but for the emotional pain inflicted on his family. He spoke openly about the nights spent in his prison cell, wondering if the truth would ever come out, and the toll it took on his wife and daughter. But Mark didn't stop there. He used his newfound platform to advocate for others who had been wrongfully convicted, those who didn't have a 7-year-old angel to plead their case. His story became a rallying cry for justice and reform, a testament to the power of truth and the resilience of the human spirit.
And Ava?
She became a symbol of hope, proof that even the smallest voices can bring about the biggest changes. In the end, it wasn't just the evidence that set Mark free. It was the courage of a little girl who refused to stop believing in her father and dared to speak up in a world that often silences the innocent. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice to change everything.